What if the greatest songwriter alive isn't the loudest voice in the room, but the one who dares to whisper the hardest truths? In an age of viral hooks and algorithm-driven hits, Jason Isbell has built something rare, a body of work that feels lived in, bruised, and unflinchingly honest. His songs don't chase trends. They don't beg for attention. They sit with you. They ask you to sit back. To understand why Isbell is often called one of the greatest living songwriters, you have to start with his relationship to truth. He writes about love without romanticizing it. He writes about addiction without glorifying it. He writes about the American South without caricature or apology. His lyrics are not slogans. They are confessions. Isbell first gained wider attention as a member of Drive-By Truckers, a band known for its muscular Southern rock storytelling. Even then, his writing stood apart. Songs like Outfit revealed a young writer with an old soul, someone capable of compressing generational wisdom into a handful of verses. The song wasn't flashy. It was specific, and in that specificity, it became universal. After leaving the band, Isbell's early solo years were uneven but revealing. He wasn't hiding his struggles. Addiction crept into his life and his music. The vulnerability that would later define his greatness was already present, though sometimes buried under chaos. What makes his later work extraordinary is not that he suffered, but that he survived, and then chose to write about survival with clarity instead of self-pity. The turning point came with sobriety. It also came with discipline. When Isbell released Southeastern in 2013, he didn't just put out a good album. He announced a new standard for himself. The record is full of songs that feel almost too intimate to overhear. Cover Me Up reads like a vow written in the aftermath of wreckage. Elephant approaches terminal illness with a restraint that makes it devastating. There are no grand metaphors to soften the blow. Just human beings facing what cannot be fixed. Great songwriting often hides its craft. Isbell's work feels effortless, but it is carefully constructed. His verses move like short stories. He sets scenes quickly. A hospital room, a motel bed, a kitchen late at night. He sketches characters with a detail or two, a line about a waitress's hands, a father's advice, a lover's silence, and suddenly they are real. He understands that a single precise image can carry more weight than a paragraph of abstraction. Unlike many contemporary writers, Isbell respects the intelligence of his listeners. He rarely over-explains. He trusts you to connect the dots. That trust creates a bond. You don't feel lectured. You feel invited. His band, the 400 Unit, plays a crucial role in shaping the emotional landscape of his songs. The arrangements are often understated, allowing the lyrics to breathe. When the music swells, it does so in service of the story, not to overshadow it. A guitar solo becomes an extension of the narrator's grief. A quiet organ line becomes the sound of resignation. Isbell's greatness also lies in his moral clarity. He is not afraid to write about social and political realities, but he does so through human lenses. Instead of slogans, he gives us families, veterans, small-town dreamers, and disillusioned workers. In Dress Blues, he writes about a fallen soldier with compassion rather than ideology. In White Man's World, he examines privilege not as an abstract concept but as a lived reality. He belongs to a lineage of American songwriters who treated songs as literature. You can hear echoes of Bob Dylan in his narrative ambition, and hints of Bruce Springsteen in his empathy for working-class lives. Yet Isbell is not derivative. He does not mimic their phrasing or politics. Instead, he carries forward their belief that songs can hold complicated truths. One of his greatest strengths is restraint. In Elephant, he tells the story of a woman dying of cancer. The narrator drinks too much. He jokes awkwardly. He watches her body fail. The song never raises its voice. There is no soaring chorus promising redemption. When the end comes, it feels unbearably ordinary. That ordinariness is the point. Isbell understands that the most profound pain often unfolds in silence. He also understands love, not as a fairy tale, but as a decision made daily. Many of his love songs are written in the shadow of past mistakes. They carry the weight of someone who knows what he stands to lose. That tension gives them gravity. When he sings about commitment, it is not naive. It is hard-earned. Plain-spoken language is one of his trademarks. He doesn't hide behind ornate vocabulary. His lines often read like something you might overhear at a bar or around a kitchen table. But within that simplicity lies precision. He chooses words carefully, favoring clarity over cleverness. The result is writing that feels timeless rather than trendy. Isbell's voice, both literally and figuratively, contributes to his reputation. There is a steadiness in his delivery. He doesn't oversell emotion. He allows cracks to show. Those cracks are not weaknesses, they are proof of experience. To call him one of the greatest songwriters alive is not hyperbole when you consider consistency. Album after album, he delivers work that deepens rather than repeats. He revisits themes, redemption, regret, Southern identity, but from new angles. He grows older in public and his songs grow with him. The mark of a great songwriter is not just technical skill, it is the ability to make listeners feel seen. Isbell's characters are often flawed, frightened, stubborn, and tender. They make mistakes. They try again. In their struggles, we recognize ourselves. In a culture that often rewards noise, Jason Isbell proves that quiet honesty can still cut through. His greatness does not rest on chart positions or awards. It rests on the simple fact that when he writes about being human, he does so without flinching. And that is rare. Part 2: Craft, Courage, and the Weight of the South. The American South is not just a backdrop in Jason Isbell's songs. It is a character. Raised in Alabama, Isbell writes about the region with both affection and scrutiny. He refuses easy narratives. The South in his songs is beautiful and broken, generous and haunted. It holds family loyalty and historical trauma in the same breath. In Alabama Pines, he captures the longing for home with a mixture of pride and fatigue. It is not a postcard version of the South. It is humid, complicated, and deeply personal. That complexity is central to his greatness. He doesn't simplify where simplification would be dishonest. Many songwriters rely on archetypes. Isbell relies on observation. He notices the way people speak, the way they avoid saying what they mean. He pays attention to economic anxiety, to generational divides, to the quiet despair that can settle over small towns when opportunity fades. His album Something More Than Free examines work, not as a romantic ideal, but as necessity. The title track speaks from the perspective of someone who measures life in shifts and paychecks. The song resists bitterness, yet it doesn't deny frustration. It acknowledges the dignity of labor without pretending it solves everything. This balance, empathy without sentimentality, is rare. Isbell does not paint villains where there are only flawed people. Even when he critiques systems, he roots the critique in lived experience. That approach gives his songs durability. They are tied to specific moments, yet they transcend them. Technically, his songwriting shows remarkable discipline. He structures verses so that each line advances the story. There is little filler. Choruses often feel less like repetition and more like emotional summation. Bridges, when they appear, shift perspective rather than merely raising volume. He also knows when to leave space. Silence in his music is powerful. A pause between lines can feel like a held breath. The band's restraint underscores the narrative weight. Isbell's courage extends beyond personal confession. He has addressed political polarization, racial inequality, and cultural myths with a clarity that risks alienating some listeners. Yet he approaches these themes not as a pundit, but as a songwriter. He asks questions. He reflects on his own position. He admits discomfort. In White Man's World, he confronts inherited privilege. The song is introspective rather than accusatory. It examines fatherhood and responsibility through a broader social lens. Instead of claiming moral superiority, Isbell exposes uncertainty. That vulnerability strengthens the message. His storytelling often centers on people at crossroads, veterans returning home, lovers deciding whether to stay, addicts weighing relapse against recovery. These moments of decision create tension. They also reveal character. Recovery, in particular, runs like a quiet thread through his catalog. He does not romanticize sobriety. He portrays it as daily work. The temptation never fully disappears. It lingers in memory. That honesty makes his redemption narratives believable. A lesser writer might frame sobriety as triumphant transformation. Isbell frames it as survival with scars. The scars remain visible. They inform his compassion for others. Musically, he draws from rock, country, and folk traditions without being confined by any of them. His guitar work can be fiery, but it rarely feels self-indulgent. Solos emerge organically from the song's emotional arc. When he plays with intensity, it serves the narrative rather than showcasing ego. His partnership with the 400 unit provides stability. The band's cohesion allows subtle dynamics. They can build to a crescendo or pull back to a whisper. That flexibility supports the storytelling at the core of Isbell's art. Comparisons to legends are inevitable. Like Bob Dylan, he values lyrical depth. Like Bruce Springsteen, he writes about working-class lives with empathy. Yet Isbell's voice remains distinctly his own, rooted in Southern cadence, shaped by personal struggle, refined by maturity. Another hallmark of greatness is evolution. Early in his career, some of his songs carried a sharper edge, sometimes bordering on bitterness. Over time, that edge has softened into reflection. The anger did not vanish, it matured. He learned to channel it into insight. Listeners often describe feeling understood by his music. That connection stems from specificity. When he describes a failing relationship, he includes the awkward details, the arguments about nothing, the silence at the dinner table. When he writes about grief, he captures the mundane tasks that follow loss. These details anchor the songs in reality. They prevent them from drifting into cliché. Isbell's willingness to examine masculinity also sets him apart. In many of his songs, male narrators grapple with vulnerability. They cry, they apologize, they doubt themselves. This portrayal challenges traditional Southern stoicism without mocking it. He acknowledges the weight of expectation while offering alternatives. Great songwriters often create worlds within 3 or 4 minutes. Isbell excels at this compression. A single verse can contain backstory, conflict, and emotional stakes. By the final chorus, the listener feels they have lived alongside the characters. Awards and critical acclaim have followed, but they are byproducts, not the source of his significance. His impact lies in the quiet testimonies of listeners who found solace in his words during divorce, illness, or recovery. To write songs that accompany people through their hardest seasons is no small achievement. It requires honesty and restraint. It requires empathy without exploitation. Jason Isbell possesses these qualities in abundance. Part 3. Legacy in Real Time. Greatness is often easier to measure in hindsight. With Jason Isbell, we are witnessing it unfold in real time. He continues to release albums that challenge him as a writer. Rather than repeating past successes, he experiments with perspective and tone. Some songs are stripped down to acoustic essentials. Others expand into fuller arrangements. Yet the core remains unchanged. Story first. His later work reflects a man aware of time's passage. There is contemplation about aging, about the responsibility of parenthood, about the fragility of stability. He writes not from reckless youth but from seasoned reflection. The phrase "greatest songwriter alive" invites skepticism. It is bold. It suggests comparison across genres and generations. But when evaluating Isbell, the claim rests not on hype but on evidence. Consider consistency. Few contemporary writers maintain such a high level of lyrical quality across multiple albums. Consider thematic depth. He revisits addiction, love, identity, and social change without redundancy. Consider craft. His songs withstand close reading. They reveal new layers over time. Another measure of greatness is influence. Younger songwriters cite him as inspiration. His approach is story-driven, emotionally direct, has become a model for artists seeking substance over spectacle. Live performance further solidifies his reputation. On stage, he delivers songs with conviction but without theatrics. He allows the lyrics to carry weight. Audiences often respond with attentive silence, a rare commodity in modern concerts. That silence is respect. He does not pretend to be a prophet. He presents himself as a flawed narrator trying to make sense of the world. This humility invites trust. Listeners sense authenticity. Authenticity is a fragile currency. Once lost, it is difficult to regain. Isbell guards it carefully. He speaks openly about mistakes, about therapy, about growth. This openness bleeds into his songwriting. In examining American identity, he avoids nostalgia traps. He acknowledges beauty, landscapes, traditions, music, while confronting injustice. This balanced view resonates in a divided era. He refuses to flatten complexity for applause. Some of his most powerful lines arrive quietly, almost offhand. A single sentence can encapsulate regret. Another can capture hope. He rarely reaches for grand declarations. Instead, he allows small truths to accumulate. Over time, those small truths form a body of work that feels substantial and enduring. When future listeners look back at this era of American songwriting, they will search for voices that captured its contradictions. They will seek artists who documented not just events, but emotions, the fear, the confusion, the resilience. Jason Isbell's catalog will stand as a record of those inner landscapes. His greatness is not flashy. It does not rely on myth. It rests on discipline, empathy, and courage. He writes as if words matter because they do. In a music industry that often rewards immediacy over depth, Isbell chooses depth. He trusts that there will always be listeners willing to lean in. And there are. To call him one of the greatest songwriters alive is to recognize a rare alignment of talent and integrity. It is to acknowledge a writer who transforms personal history into shared experience. It is to celebrate songs that endure not because they dominate charts, but because they tell the truth. Jason Isbell does not shout his greatness. He earns it line by line. And as long as he continues to write with this level of honesty and craft, the claim will not feel exaggerated. It will feel accurate.